Morning, YouTube. As you can see, basically I'm gonna find the Stargazer stone today. Now what happened is when Mason and Dixon started their line, they came to the end of South Street and they started it right here. I'll flip the camera around. So you can see they started from this point to the southernmost point of Philadelphia. And what they had to do, they basically had to trace from 10 miles south of this point. But the problem is, from 10 miles south, you end up in the Delaware River somewhere. So if you go 10 miles south from here, you can't really start a survey of the line from that point. So instead, they started here, and they went 20 miles west out into the countryside beyond Philadelphia, and that's where they started. So today, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna trace that route. So I'm gonna start here. We're starting here, and now I'm gonna get in my car, and I'm gonna drive 20 miles west to find the Stargazer stone. All right, I got my car keys, and we're gonna drive 20 miles west out in the Pennsylvania countryside to find the Stargazer stone, where they actually started doing their observations to then set the starting point for the Mason-Dixon line, which is the bottom of Pennsylvania's border. Now, one little tidbit is, I think I actually read or saw in a video somewhere that this corner is right where they really perfectly would have started, somewhere like right there on the ground. So I got my keys, the sign's over there. This is maybe the corner exactly where they would have started. For surveying, people like to be exact, so that right there I think is the exact spot. I got my keys, let's go. All right, we are here, and we are at the Stargazer stone, and I'm about to cross the street in a second. But while I'm walking over to it, I want to tell you a little bit about it, and also sort of correct some of what I just said on South Street. Because here's the thing: I'm not a surveyor. I also am not a historian. So, but I know surveyors, and I know people who get into the finding these stones. They really care about being exact about this stuff. So I want to put a disclaimer here. I want you to, if any surveyors, any Mason-Dixon line people, if you're watching this, I want you to correct anything I'm saying. So here's the first corrections before we walk over to it. First of all, from South Street, the first task that Mason and Dixon were given was to measure 15 miles south. I said 10 miles. It was actually 15 miles south of the southernmost point of Philadelphia, which at that time was South Street. So they went 15 miles south, and then from 15 miles south, the problem is that's in the middle of the Delaware River. So they couldn't do a survey from the middle of the river. That didn't work. So what they decided to do was go 35 miles west from that point. I said 20 miles. I was wrong. It's 35 miles. So I just drove 35 miles west of South Street, and I'm here at the Stargazer stone. Now, the Stargazer stone itself is not the exact point from which Mason and Dixon made their observations. It's what I guess surveyors would call a back site. And a back site is sort of a reference point in the landscape that you can use as a surveyor to make other measurements from. So it's an important place because it's exactly 35 miles from the end of South Street, but it's not the exact spot where Mason and Dixon actually ended up making their measurements from. We may have to visit that place in another video because that's in a beautiful house. They sort of went, there's a house somewhere in this area. I think it's called the Hartford House. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they went to that house after they looked at the stone. And from that house they made all their observations. All right, maybe you can see it right back here. yeah, that's it. Oh, one more correction. At the end of my video, I pointed to a spot on the corner of South Street and Front Street, and I said that corner property was actually the start of where they did the line. That's not correct either. It's actually, when the start of the line was a house that is now in the middle of what is now I-95. So, they paved over that house. But in order to figure that out, at some point, some surveyors in 2013, they looked at old property markings and they measured from that corner out into I-95 to find the exact spot where the house would have been. So I just wanted to add that little correction. So, pretty much everything I said in the introduction is wrong. So again, I'm not a historian. I'm trying to figure this out myself. If you know anything better, please, again, leave it in the comments. All right, so let's walk over to it. The sign I was just at is over there. That's sort of that sign right there by the side of the road. But this is the Stargazer stone. It's just often, there's just a field, just in the middle of a field. Anyone can come up to it. Here we go. There it is. Oh, I don't know. What do you think? Kind of interesting. Honestly, I don't know what I expected, but kind of looks pretty beat up to me. I think that must be the original stone. I don't know if it's been replaced, but clearly whoever's maintaining it has put this nice rock wall around it. But yeah, I kind of expected a more substantial stone of some sort for all the hype. But the rock wall is actually pretty cool. Other stones have cages around them. If you saw in my previous video on the tangent stone has a nice cage around it to protect it. But I guess this is at least going to protect it from lawn mowers and plows and all sorts of, equipment that might hit it when people are taking care of this field. But yeah, there it is. So let's read this plaque real quick. Also, I wanted to note, you see that hole right there? That looks like a drainage hole. That's a good thing to put in, because otherwise I can see how this would fill with water when it rains. And you got a pond. All right, the Stargazer stone. Erected in 1764 by Mason and Dixon in locating the Pennsylvania-Maryland boundary line, being 15 miles north thereof and 31 miles due west of Philadelphia. 31 miles? I thought it was 35 miles. Oh well. All right, the sign says 31 miles. So I'm giving you all sorts of... I said 20 miles, then 35 miles. Now the thing says 31 miles. Anyway, due west of Philadelphia. Here, they also measured a degree of latitude on the Earth's surface southward and made other astronomical observations, hence the name Stargazer Stone. And this enclosed and marked by the Chester County Historical Society, 1908. So, that's interesting. There you go. Howdy. All right, some other stargazers came up to enjoy it while I was recording, so we'll let them see it. That's kind of nice to see people visiting it, at least. I think the plaque is actually technically wrong, because again, that's not exactly where they took their observations for the longitude, latitude. They took those observations over at this house that I'm talking about. I think it's called the Hartford House or something like that nearby. That might be another video I do, because I don't have enough time to really go over there right now. But yeah, I just wanted to. That's the Stargazer stone, so we tick that box. I'm doing a series on the Mason-Dixon line stones. Eventually, I would like to visit every single stone that still exists and maybe find some of the lost stones, because there are quite a few that are missing. Maybe like five or six or eight, something like that. Between 5 and 10 stones are kind of missing. Also, those stones may not actually be missing. They're just buried in the ground, but they're marked as missing because there was a survey done recently, a couple years ago, and the surveyors couldn't actually locate those stones, so they marked them as missing, even though technically they're probably just buried. I want to do interviews with people who are into tracking the Mason-Dixon line markers, and one thing about these markers is they're not national landmarks. They're not on a national landmark registry, but I think they should be. Because they're really important pieces of American history, and they're just like in random fields like this, All right, the other visitors left, so I want to take one more look at this place, because I drove all the way out here, and I don't want to be rushed necessarily. I want to enjoy seeing it, take a closer look. It is funny how I drove here. There was no one here. Probably very few people have visited today, but I happened to pick the exact moment when another couple walked up. Somehow that seems to happen. But anyway, look at this stone. It's got a flat top and a chunk missing right out the side there. And it doesn't look like, I can't quite reach it, which is good. But I could climb over the wall. I'm not going to. But it doesn't look like the same type of material as the other Mason-Dixon line markers. At least to me, it doesn't. There you go, I can reach it here. So I touched it. It's in there, pretty solid. It looks like a type of granite or something. It's got bits of mica, maybe. But yeah, it definitely has this chunk taken out and all sorts of other divots. So. I wonder what that mark is. It looks almost like it's covered in sugar. It's got sparkly white parts on it. Yeah. So, there you go. And it's interesting how this is built with jagged edges, across the top. I wonder why they did that. I guess to prevent people from crawling across it. That one way of preventing people from getting in is to make it a little jagged, so you wouldn't walk on it or sit on it. Maybe also to prevent deer and other wildlife from climbing onto it. You can see it's got mortar. That looks more modern to me. 1908 is supposedly when this was made, so according to the plaque. Okay, now we'll really take our leave from the Stargazer stone. Let me see. I hear birds, but I don't see any birds. And I certainly don't see any stars. But I bet this is an interesting place to come at night and see some stars. That'd be fun. I really do think it should be a historic landmark. I mean, these stones are just out in the middle of fields like this. And I hope, they get taken care of. Seems like the Chester County Historical Society is taking care of that one. So thanks to them for preserving it. Thanks to whoever is preserving it, whoever's mowing the grass here and making sure that that monument exists in perpetuity for all to enjoy. It's a little piece of a Pennsylvania history, a little piece of American history, a little piece of Maryland history. And it's very strange. We have our own. I often say this, we live in an ancient landscape. But even forgetting about the ancient stuff, this is sort of Enlightenment era, 300 years ago, 1764. And that stone, you go to other countries and you see stones from 300 years ago and they're monuments and they're ancient. They're they're parts of history, right? And what am I trying to say? I guess, when I think of ancient stones that are mysterious, I think of ancient Egypt, I don't think of a stone right here in Pennsylvania in the middle of a field. But, ancient Egypt, 3,000 years old. Our stone is 300 years old. It's still what we got, It's still our history. And I think we should preserve it. And I hope more people come to visit it and enjoy it. And I hope it gets added to the National Registry of Historic Monuments and gets preserved and gets grant money and all of that, because it really needs it. So let's the MDCCC or something, the Maryland, what is it called? The Maryland, it's the Maryland Geological Survey has done work to preserve the Mason-Dixon line markers. There is also a group called the Mason-Dixon Conservation Society or something like that. I'll leave a link in the description. They're doing great work and they're responsible for a lot of the surveying to preserve these stones, like the Stargazer stones. So let's support them. I don't know if they take donations or, not sure how to support, but I'll leave a link in the description and hopefully these things can be preserved. So, all right, I'm ticking this box. We've done the Tangent Stone. We've done the Stargazer Stone. We've done the southern point of Philadelphia, which is the end of South Street. We've covered the stone that's on Charles Mason's grave in Christ Church Cemetery. And have we done any others? I think that's pretty much it for now. But I'm going to do more. So, yeah. This is it. So Stargazer, done. Thanks for coming on this adventure. My name's Sean. This is my channel, It's All Good. See you in the next one. Bye. Hey, oh my gosh. As I was pulling away, I saw it. I saw the house. Here it is. See it? See it here? And look at this. Just off the side of the road. This is the actual spot where they did the observations. Site of Mason and Dixon Stargazing Observatory, 1764. In the roadbed near this stone, a square iron spike marks the original location of the astronomical observatory used by the surveyor astronomers Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon in the year 1764 to determine latitude from the stars. It was from here they began measuring 15 miles due south to lay out the boundary between Maryland and Pennsylvania, which came to be known as the Mason and Dixon's Line. This plaque, dedicated August 29th, 2013 by surveyors of the Historical Society and Mason-Dixon Line Preservation Partnership. That's great. Now there is something actually a little wrong here too. Let me see. What's wrong? Location of the astronomical observatory. You said to determine latitude from the stars. I mean, that's true. They looked for 8 constellations so that they knew exactly where they were. They measured 8 constellations in the stars. And look, there's a little. That's what their telescope looked like. Okay, so we're looking for an iron spike. There is something wrong between layout between the boundary, 15 miles due south. So from this point between Maryland and Pennsylvania, I feel like maybe it's Delaware and Pennsylvania. There's something wrong about this. Someone in the comments, let's figure it out. But it doesn't quite make sense. I'm not exactly sure why. But all right, so if I turn around, here is the iron spike. Now this is a pretty busy road, so I got to choose my timing here. But look at this iron spike. That's it. Yeah, there's some cars coming. But look, there's the iron spike. Wild. You know, people drive. I wonder how many people know about this. This spike is exactly where Mason and Dixon had took their observations. They lived in this house for a winter in 1664, and they would just kind of throw. Look at this. They would just kind of throw a tarp over their telescope when they weren't using it, and it was right there, and that's pretty neat. I'm glad I found that before I left. So, okay, that's it.